It's alive!
How do we know she is alive?
I hate when people talk during the movie.
No wire hangers ever!
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Your stupid minds! Stupid! Stupid!
Fresh meat. What have you fucking done?
What have you done?
What have you bloody boys done? We're back, Ryan.
Before we start, would you like a chug-a-lug of this water?
I would actually like a chug-a-lug. You don't bloody chug-a-lug a $30 bottle of water.
I never said chug-a-lug.
Okay, what we doing? Oh shit, we're back. Oh shit, we are fully back for season 2. For the first official episode of season 2. With our sideshow. This is so cool. Before we get into it, I've been thinking about this movie that we're going to cover today. And the title. Specifically the title, I want to know. Because you, as a food connoisseur, and by connoisseur I mean person who never eats food.
Absolutely.
But you do eat pizza. Like,
I love pizza.
I can trust you if we go out for a meal. If there is pizza on the menu, like, that's a good fallback.
Easy.
But you're not really a toppings guy.
Oh, no, I have had a pepperoni pizza since I was about 6-year-old.
It's about as adventurous as you get. Yeah.
I once branched out and got chicken and pepperoni pizza for a while, but I got
again.
sick one day and I never went back to it.
Literally never touched chicken ever again. But like, well, right. So we are going to we're covering a movie day. We're covering Licorice Pizza. If you couldn't tell by the title and the cover art, what would your worst topping be? Because licorice is probably quite high up there on mine because I fucking hate licorice.
Oh, licorice would be fucking disgusting.
There's no reason for licorice. But there is no reason for licorice to exist as a flavor. Let's be honest. It just tastes like
fox piss. It's one of the most potent, foul-smelling things I can imagine.
What? What kind of bumpkin backward-ass shit? Hello, guys, and welcome to Fresh Meat, the Bad Taste Buds supplementary show, where me and Ryan talk the latest about what's showing at your local multiplex theater, giving you the news, previews, and reviews, and trying to steer you away from any cinematic icebergs with our unwaveringly correct opinions all the time. Today we are covering...
There's a lot in there, wasn't there?
There was a lot in there. You know what? I got through it in one, usually. I think Season 2 is going to be a game changer. No more stumbling for this fella.
Yep.
You don't seem as confident. Today we are taking a trip to the San Fernando. I did it immediately. Today we are taking a trip to the San Fernando Valley back in 1973 for the latest Paul Thomas Anderson flick, Licorice Pizza.
Yum.
Yummy, yummy, yummy. From the latest Paul Thomas Anderson flick, Licorice Pizza, which was why we were talking about pizza so much at the start. This is a new film from kind of one of the most affluent directors in Hollywood. I don't know if you've seen much by Paul Thomas Anderson.
Not loads. Obviously, like Boogie Nights, Magnolia.
Some of my absolute favorite films of all time are kind of in his catalog. Some films I'm not a massive fan of, like Inherent Vice was his last kind of big film. And Phantom Thread I've never actually seen. No. He works with Daniel Day-Lewis a lot and Joaquin Phoenix.
That tells you a lot. Anyone's got the balls to work with Phoenix for an extended period of time.
And Day-Lewis, apparently. Apparently they're both divas. So, but he gets good performances. He's always credited quite highly as one of Hollywood's most influential directors. Back with this coming of age story from his perspective as a child who grew up in the 70s, and with a story that is garnering a little bit of controversy. We're going to kind of discuss what we thought about it. We saw it yesterday, still fresh in our heads. This term, actually, Licorice Pizza, do you know anything about this? Or is this like this title? Because there's nothing about
no, I've been thinking
pizza.
about it. I honestly thought it was going to be something about licorice pizza.
Waiting for the pizza to show up. I mean, we could have... we were actually I want to give a shout out to the cinema we were at, because you could actually order pizza where we were at.
Oh,
and it's the coolest fucking
the
thing.
Everyman Newcastle, if any of you are ever in the area, does food, like nachos and shit, and you get it ordered while you sat down.
The area being where, Ryan?
Newcastle upon Tyne in the England.
The
England Isles.
The great tune. So Licorice Pizza, this is actually it's a bit of 70s vernacular. Comes from the slang term for a vinyl record, actually, which you will be surrounded by.
Oh my god, that makes so much sense. It looks like licorice and it's in the shape of a pizza.
Well, it resembles licorice, the black kind of shiny, almost like...
with the lines as well.
The lines, and the shape of a pizza. And there was actually a few record stores in Glendale, California, so where this film is set.
Oh, I feel fucking dumb.
In the 70s. I mean, not really. I mean, it doesn't really have anything to do with vinyls
I'm
either.
surrounded by vinyls, though.
Well, I guess there is
very
that.
70s.
If it helped, I didn't know that until I looked it up. So I'm also probably stupider.
Because
as a person who collects vinyls, I probably should have known that term, but I didn't, and I learn, and we all learn. But, it's cool.
Every day's a learning day.
Every day is a learning day. Licorice Pizza is the story of Alana Kane and Gary Valentine.
Played by Alana Haim and Cooper Hoffman.
It's not Seymour Hoffman, is it? It's just Hoffman, which I always... Wait.
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
That's why I wondered. Was Seymour just his middle name?
I'm guessing so, because this is just Cooper Hoffman.
He's great. We'll get to this. We'll get to kind of what we thought about the performances, isn't it? But it is Alana Haim from the band Haim, the youngest Haim member. Who
1/3 of Haim.
we absolutely adore. It also has the rest of the Haim sisters and just the
And the
entire
parents.
Haim family.
And even more of the dad.
He's fucking wonderful. We'll get to that. But yeah, it's a star turn for both the leads. I think Alana and Cooper are definitely going to be kind of, I think for me anyway, ones to watch after this film. So the story follows Alana Kane and Gary Valentine growing up, running around, and falling in love in the San Fernando Valley in the 1970s. It's written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, and it tracks the treacherous navigation of love at first sight, with a little bit of controversy thrown in for good measure as well.
I would say this isn't quite a friendship, isn't quite a love
It's a
story.
weird little imbalance, yeah. There's a mix of both of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like this weird in-between place, which you know what, I think is really refreshing. It's kind of new. You don't see that all the time. It's very much geared towards one way or the other.
Yeah.
Either they'll be platonic friends or they'll end up in a relationship, and that's...
We should probably, because we haven't. The reason the controversy arose is because Gary Valentine and Cooper himself are 15. So I think that kind of exemplifies his performance even more. He's 15.
Actually
yeah.
15. My God,
those pimples were real.
he plays an old 15-year-old. Well done him. He really embodied what our character was about.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I think Alana Haim's a little bit older. I think she's like maybe in her late 20s, but she plays 25-year-old. So this budding romance between a 15-year-old child and a 25-year-old adult is obviously kind of room for controversy and room for discussion. I think we should probably start there. I think before we really get into what we feel about the film and what we feel about the performances,
absolutely.
I think because there's a couple of controversies here, and
So
I understand why.
So I'm feeling that Gary, played by Cooper, is a very old 15-year-old. The way he holds himself around other adults, he was a child star, so he's like had to grow up quite quickly, and you see he just wants to move on and up in life and crack on. And he does play a very old 15-year-old, and Alana plays a very young 25-year-old, where she's
Emotionally,
kind of like, it's Arrested Development.
It is Arrested Development. It's a bit of like a mix between Arrested Development and this idea of like failure to launch, this idea of people stuck in infancy, and this idea of people stuck in kind of an inability to move past childhood. Now, we're neither of us saying it's appropriate, because it's not. It's very much not appropriate.
But I think it makes it easier to watch, knowing that, one, it's addressed, because this was a thing that happened in the 70s. Like, come on, we were all a lot looser. And when it was a boy and an older woman, it was all like, "Oh mate, oh go you." How cool is that?
I'm kind of glad Anderson actually covered that, because that's only a mindset that I think has changed within the last 10 years. Like, even you think back to that, there's an iconic episode of South Park
where Ike starts dating his teacher, and the police were all like, "Oh, good for him." Yeah,
but it's an interesting discussion that like female predatory behavior has only really just came into the conversation. And you're right, back in 73, I mean, Anderson, the reason he made this film and the reason he directed this film is because he had a friend. It's actually based off a true story. He had a friend who was 15 who had a date with a 20-year-old woman. Ooh. And he kind of envisioned, I don't think it went past a date, but I think he envisioned, what would this relationship be like if it continued? How would these two how would these two influence each other's lives? Yeah, but I honestly think that there isn't a lot in the way of reciprocation, at least for the most of the film.
Part, yeah. I think that definitely makes it easier.
It does.
The way the characters are portrayed, you tend to feel that they are closer in age.
Yeah.
And it's only when Alana addresses it and keeps telling them that he's a child that you actually remember again.
And I also think the age gap is extremely important to the narrative as well, because it
would not work otherwise.
I mean, thematically, it's all about this. You're right, the state of arrested development for her and the state of failure to launch for him. He is desperate to be an adult. And you see that through his actions, and you see that through the fact that at age 15 he has like 2 businesses by the end of the film.
Yeah, man. The way he dresses, he knows like 8-year-old men everywhere.
Yeah,
goes around, knows all the local restaurateurs and the owners. Has his own money because of his acting career, so he kind of gets to act.
And he has this like level of showmanship that I think Hoffman portrays so phenomenally.
Yeah, he says that about himself as a character.
Yeah, he's a showman.
Like, he's a showman, and that really is portrayed.
But even in the way he interacts with all the adult characters, even past Alana, like the way he interacts with kind of the casting agents or even his mum, like his relationship with his mum's quite interesting, because she kind of relies on him.
It's very much he's always on their level. He always tries to be anyway.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's incredibly morally fucked up. Like, we're not denying that. but I hate this idea that we are almost like so quick to cancel things because they deal with controversial or touchy subjects, and I really want to steer away from that. I think as far as literary criticism, like this is a literary piece. People who think that film aren't pieces of literature and pieces of art can go suck my dick. But we can't immediately cancel things just because it has a controversial topic or a topic that you think may be uncomfortable to you. Feel free not to watch it if you may be creeped out by an intimate relationship between a 15-year-old boy and a 25-year-old woman. But if you are mature enough to understand that, and I don't think Anderson's framing this as a positive, healthy thing.
Oh, it's fully not a healthy relationship that they have.
And he's saying, like, obviously he wanted to create a film that felt inherently 70s and steeped in the nostalgia and the
not
periods.
only does it feel like it's steeped in the period, it feels like the movie just absolutely in every possible way wants to be a movie that was made in the 70s.
Yeah.
Short of time travel, I don't know what else he could have done.
Yeah. Well, this is it. Like, I do think a lot of people, I don't think people are adept enough in literary criticism, but canceling movies that accurately depict certain time periods because they make you uncomfortable is a terrifying indictment on your inability to appreciate art. It's like the people who try and ban Of Mice and Men in schools or Mockingbird because they have, like, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to get some flack for this, but I don't feel like racial slurs in period pieces should not be taught in school. Like, I get it, and I know I'm maybe not the kind of person who should have that opinion. I'm not sure. I feel like I'm getting myself into trouble on episode 1 of season 2. But I also think there is an appreciation to art from a certain time period that you need to keep.
It's reflective.
But this is it. Like, when you cancel things and when you banish things from the public consciousness, what are you learning from? Like,
I mean,
how
you have that adage of those who don't heed history.
This is it.
To repeat
This is it. It's like when Disney remakes Dumbo and gets rid of all the any allusion to the fact that Dumbo had extremely racist content in it. Like, you are not learning from history by misrepresenting it. I think is the problem. If you had a 70s that wasn't representative of how fucked the 70s could have been, but also how beautiful the 70s was, I think this movie has such a good balance of, like, the 70s being this dark, fucked up period, but also this period of a lot of light and a lot of beauty as well, and a lot of art,
music, a lot of color. That time period where people would walk up on the street and then just start doing that leg dance. Or just kick one leg out either side, and then everyone in the little group would join in.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not saying this is right. It's definitely not right. The relationship, I don't think, is portrayed as meant to be and we'll get to this. I think there is one fuck up Anderson makes, and I think I want to get to this a little bit later on.
Okay.
But art is allowed to make you feel uncomfortable, and none of it that diminishes what is still a sublimely crafted movie with two extremely interesting characters and extremely brilliant performances.
I think it just has to be, like, true. Like Candyman, for example.
This is it. Loads of people got pissed off at that because it was quote unquote political. How dare they?
But it hit on such important themes, and it had such
they?
an interesting narrative and gave us such a good perspective.
Yeah.
That, like, no matter what they really did, it would have been a worthwhile piece of art.
I mean, before we move on to how we felt about the film, there is another controversy I quickly
feel like I know where this is going.
Well, go on. What do you think?
Is this racism towards the Japanese?
So, yeah, there is this subplot, and I say subplot really loosely because it's barely even that. About one of the characters who his mum works for, she's a copywriter for, who owns a Japanese restaurant, and his kind of whole shtick is that he has a different Japanese wife every week.
So he's American, and he has 2 different Japanese wives, and he talks to them in the broken English Japanese accent, and it's revealed later that he doesn't even speak Japanese, and he is just straight up racist. But it's never really, I don't feel like that's ever fully addressed. It's kind of there, and I think I've heard a couple of people laughing in the cinema, but I kind of felt uncomfortable.
Yeah, this is the thing. Like, I think when we saw it, it happens twice. And the actor's John Michael Higgins as well, who you'll probably know best from Pitch Perfect.
Yeah, no, of course not. He's in loads of things.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. Like, and Anderson, he's kind of talked about this as well. He thinks, and I kind of agree with him, but it's a form of again, insincerity if you don't portray.
No, I get it. It was real. Like, that shit still happens to this day consistently.
Yeah.
I hear someone doing a Middle Eastern accent at least once a week.
And it's awful. But again, he's capturing kind of reality, and especially reality in the 70s. But again, he says reality. Now, his Anderson's dad and his mother, I think his mother's Japanese. And he apparently still hears people talk to her in that kind of broken English, that kind of super racist kind of. I mean, it is slurs at the end of the day, and it is super offensive.
Yeah.
But I do kind of concur with some people that I almost don't feel like Anderson took it far enough in the film, where it's like it happens twice. It's almost played off as a laugh.
Yeah, that's what it is. It felt like one of those jokes that would be in a 90s sitcom or something.
Yeah, it felt kind of past its time.
Yeah, rather than being like a mirror, felt like a gag.
Honestly, if he wanted to do it, which I feel like he should have, I feel like this is definitely something that should have been brought into the attention of the film. But I think he should have done more with it. I think there should have been some repercussions or some kind of follow through on that narrative thread. But also, I wondered that. I mean, people who know Anderson know that that's not really how he works as a storyteller.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame him really.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say this has a plot per se as a series of happenings and incidences.
I kind of love that. I know you are not as
no,
much of a
I
fan,
like that. I don't need particularly that narrative.
Well, let's get into, if we're going to get into what we liked and what we didn't like, let's get into the review. Like, I do genuinely think I love this.
We haven't started yet.
Well, no, we've just been talking
Used to
about
me.
controversy for 16 minutes. I genuinely think this is an achingly beautiful film. It's powerfully evocative. It's a powerfully evocative love letter to the 70s that's equals parts incredibly affectionate, but also similarly admonishing, I think, in a way that I think Anderson paints the San Fernando Valley at this time as both a period of great beauty and of great levels of darkness as well. Like, we have all this really cute humor, these really cute interactions alongside little weird subplots of, like, you have a murderer on the loose at one point, and you have our main character Gary. And again, let's get into spoiler territory as well. I tell you what, before we do, we'll give a quick non-spoilery review. In fact, I've cut all this out, Brian. This is Liam talking to you from the future.
No.
There's no fucking spoilers in this. I don't know why I'm fucking talking. You have a murderer running loose who's referred to once and then dropped. You have an aging movie star doing tricks for attention. It has this obscure fascination with Hollywood. And I say obscure because it's almost prophetic in the way that you have these two burgeoning stars with Alana and with Cooper kind of playing themselves in a way. Like, you have two people who are new to film and new to cinema and new to Hollywood, playing people who are aching for Hollywood and aching for Hollywood glamour and aching for that kind of that recognition. I think is what they're both desperate for. And one of the biggest themes, I think, is that they both just want someone to care for them. Either in Gary's case, romantically, or in Alana's case, I think she just needs that attention. I think she's just a character who's starved for attention. She's the youngest sister in a family of 5, all of whom live at home. And again, I think a lot of the comedy really works from kind of those family dynamics, because again, I see.
What are you thinking, you thinker?
It's so unapologetically realistic the way they portray the family and the way they portray all the characters. And I think the way Anderson portrays character in all of his films is
That's 90% of what made this
real.
film work.
Yeah.
That's 90% of the movie is how Alana
Yeah.
goes around and addresses people. She's like tirading down the halls and is like, fuck off out of my way, teenagers.
It's so accurate. It's so beautifully well done and well performed by Alana as well. What a breakout! I mean, me and you have been fans of Haim since. I mean, for me anyway, since their first record, since I heard Falling, and weirdly enough, Anderson's because Anderson's a bit obsessed with Haim as well. He does all their music videos now. He heard Falling from the first album, and he what he said was he basically kept hearing it on repeat, like it would follow him everywhere he went. So anytime he put the radio on, it was on. He was like, "Who the fuck are these three girls that keep following me around?" But also his mother, I think, the mother Haim, I don't know what her name is. She also had quite a personal relationship with Anderson as well, and I think they're actually really close. And I quite like that element to it. I think that lends to the authenticity of the film as well. You can see that this is a passion project not only for Anderson but also for Cooper and for Alana as well.
Yeah, but I feel like it definitely shows in the way that her character's portrayed, because it feels like he knows her and how to get the best out of her before she's even walked on the set.
And what a refreshing, and again, I think a lot of the reasons they cast Alana as well, what a refreshing take to have actors walk around with no makeup on in the film. Like, both her and Cooper as well. Just these,
and not just them
incredibly
either.
raw performances.
It felt like almost everyone that was in this looked like a normal human, a normal average person, and it was amazing.
Well, let's get onto that. The cameos in this, just in and of themselves, are a little movie. Because again, you're right. Like, the way Anderson tells his narratives is they're these weird little disjointed slices of life. That there is this overarching theme where
I'm forever referring to them as happenings and incidences.
Happenings and incidences. I like that. It's concise. So yeah, I mean, you could argue that the plot is Alana and Gary trying to make a business for themselves. They make a waterbed business to start, and then they go into full-time acting, and then Alana goes into politics for a little bit, and then they go into. So this is kind of the thing that strings us along, but really it's not about that.
None of that's relevant.
None of it's relevant. It's not about that. It's about these interactions, and it's about these characters' growths and their depth. And along the way we meet, so we've got cameos from Maya Rudolph, we've got cameos from Sean Penn, we've got Bradley Cooper, and probably the best of the cameos, playing Barbara Streisand's boyfriend, who's just this manic, borderline psychotic douchebag.
Yeah,
it's probably the best way to describe him.
You see him like angry and drunk, stumbling about constantly.
Yeah.
He walks past a couple of women, who's like, "Do you like peanut butter sandwiches?" That's like opening line. It's cringy, amazing.
Ultimately, these ventures are irrelevant to the idea that this is a story about two deeply interesting, fucked up people. And as cliche as it might sound, it is a coming of age drama for both of them. It's a moment of realization, and I'm still not quite getting to the point where I want to talk about my one fatal flaw with this film. But I don't know if you know what it is yet, and I'm wondering.
For you, I actually don't.
Well, we'll get there. I think because I want to keep talking about the positives for now. I think this is an incredibly accurate movie. It's honest, it's brutally honest, and it's uncomfortable. And I think those moments of uncomfortableness really lend to how deeply affecting the actual story is. And it did hit me. It didn't make me cry or anything. It's not going to be one of those films I look back at and think, Jesus, that really...
I think, if anything, this is one of Anderson's happier movies.
Yeah, I think it's a lot lighter. And again, you think, comparing it to something like Boogie Nights, which again, one of my all-time favorites, there's a lot more kind of vibrancy. And I think, again, the interplay with the soundtrack, the way the soundtrack dances with these moments, these flights of fancy as well, kind of lends to the lightness of it. It's a slice of the 70s portrayed on the big screen, lovingly portrayed on the big screen as well.
Especially now, since COVID, everyone's been locked in. There's that want for wanderlust again.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, his filmography is filled with shining moments of genius, like other than Inherent Vice, which I've never been a massive fan of. I think my adoration is going to continue with him into Licorice Pizza. There are scenes here that are so true to life, so painfully realistic, you almost forget you're watching actors perform their lines. There are shots so lavish and painstakingly choreographed. We get these long, drawn-out tracking shots of them, like, running. There's a lot of running shots in this film, which I think, again...
There's a few.
It's like, and if you want me to be a literary critic, if you want me to be that wanky arsehole who, like, wants to read into everything, I mean, we've got a character running away from their responsibilities and their adulthood, and we've got one character running too fast into the future. I mean, this is why literary criticism exists, and this is why I think the film can be so powerful, and why I'm so thankful that we got to see a film like this on the big screen before Disney entirely corners the market and everything is Spider-Man 4.
It's not even mainstream. We had to go to indie cinema to watch
this is the problem again, and I mean, this has been talked about for Oscars, but we're not seeing a lot at the minute. I don't even think Belfast is getting a wide release, and it's a shame, and it is, because I would argue with me all you want. This is a much better film than something like, and I enjoyed Spider-Man to an extent, but this is a much better film, and this is like I genuinely think people try and argue like, oh, but it's not a big budget superhero film with action and explosions. This is better shot. This has more beautiful scenes than anything in Spider-Man. There's like there's one shot that he filmed that there's two I want to talk about, but there's one shot he films through a window. And it's near the end, and it's when Gary opens one of his other ventures, and it's all filmed static, shot through a window. And I swear to God, my jaw was on the floor with just how beautifully he'd managed to stage one of these shots. That, and there's another shot in a van, which you'll know, where one of the characters is driving a van, and it's like this 5-minute segment, and it's maybe one of the best things I've seen all year. And I just lose my mind a little bit at moments like this.
I really like the part where, do you know, when they're in his agent's office, and they're both there, and she's on the phone for most of it, but they do an extreme close-up of her face, like down to like you can see every molecule in every tooth, and it's so intense and provocative, and
it's intimate. Intimate is probably the best word I can use to describe it.
That's the right word. I just felt so close to that moment.
Intimate and hilarious. Like we were consistently, apart from the you're right. I think Anderson fumbles it a little bit with some of the intentions with the jokes.
I get what they were going for,
but I think a lot of it is genuinely hilarious. As well. Like, we were cackling throughout.
The beats work. The humor works. It's very funny. It's very much like this is probably how I'd react to a bunch of kids.
Yeah, probably, I mean, absolutely. Again, it feels realistic in that sense. The way Anderson tells his narratives are not going to be for everyone. He has always had this way of telling very loosely interconnected narrative beats. A character might, you're right, a character might get a job, and the next minute they're at a party, and the next minute, like, they're, I don't know, washing their clothes, yada yada. A lot of it doesn't kind of. It feels like it progresses the same way life progresses. Life just kind of happens in spite of itself. We go where life takes us. It's unpredictable, and we are just along for the ride. But it's those small character interactions, like you said, in the agency office, or later when, again, I spoil the territory for people who haven't seen it. I don't want to ruin too much of the really good scenes.
They've been warned.
They've been warned. But like even the scenes where Gary is falsely arrested and Alana kind of takes him out of prison, and they just have this beautiful shot of them running around and they're laughing and giggling. It's those moments that I think.
That's the first time she runs towards him because he gets inexplicably just taken away for whatever reason. She's like, suspect, blue vest, blue shirt, 16-year-old. He's like, I'm 15, not 16.
It's these small character moments and these small moments that somehow add up to a much larger whole. It's equal parts vulnerable as it is grand, I think. And you can see Anderson's influence all the way through, his adoration for the time period, from its elaborate photorealistic style, the decision to have non-actors wearing makeup, like we said, and the soundtracks. You have Wings, you have Sonny and Cher, we have Bowie. There's this beautiful Life on Mars scene that you probably saw in the trailer. But anytime that song comes on, I get a little bit giddy anyway. But I do kind of want to circle back to, I think, if there is an issue with the controversies with the age gap, and I know a lot of people say, "Oh, try and reverse the roles." If this was a 25-year-old man and a 15-year-old girl, how would this play?
But I
get
mean,
that,
right? But isn't there I want to say Clint Eastwood in made in '73, I think, where there's this young hippie girl who's definitely underage, and he's like a wrinkled divorcee or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't remember what it is.
That was made in '73, and that was uncomfortable.
But also, even more recently, someone pointed out that, and I can't remember this film for the life of me, but 21 Jump Street, Jonah Hill's character is a full-grown adult, but he's hitting on a high school girl throughout the entire film. It's an interesting one. I do think you could make a film with a 25-year-old man and a 15-year-old girl, and yes, it still would be as weird as this is. And none of us are defending the relationship, but we are defending the art and the growth. And even if you see Gary's as a character, his coming of age story, Alana, she is an integral part of that, for better or worse, whether or not this is predatory or whether or not it is. And yeah, you're right, it is. It's a 25-year-old girl, and
I mean, let's be clear, he's fully creeping on her. For like
but this is the thing, and she is non-reciprocative until, and we're getting there, the bit that I think kind of fucking throws the baby with. Well, not even that.
He was just like, I really want to see your boobs. You go on camera and show your boobs off, but you won't show me.
This is why I didn't mind that.
Comes back like, fine, you want to see them? You can fucking see them. Pulls them out, puts them back up, and then like there's no romanticism there.
Well,
She's just trying to like appease a child, and she fucks off again.
Well, again, this is why I think that scene didn't bother me actually, because I think we when we over-sexualize breasts anyway in the media and in Hollywood, breasts, like my tits are no different to a woman's tits.
But this was very under-sexualized,
It was
which I like.
very
Just the whole movie, there was no like sex, the carnal lust that's in Boogie Nights, for example.
Yeah.
And Magnolia, that's not here in this.
No, but I think the bit that shits the bed a little bit, and I don't even know if it does, because I think on a rewatch I might see it differently, is the ending.
Really?
Only because, and again, massive spoiler alerts for the ending. If you haven't seen this film, I want to say we're going to talk about this for maybe 2 minutes.
By this point, remember, Gary's probably like 16.
I think they said he's 17 at this point. I think enough time has passed to where he got 17.
When we start the movie, in a month's time, he would have been 16.
Then
he has two businesses.
So at the end, they end up they have a falling out. They do meet up with each other. Gary kisses Alana.
But that's a really important scene, though. You're just kind of glossing over.
Sorry, you go for it. Yeah.
Where he's opened his pinball business and he's asked Alana to come. He's given the message to Danielle Haim, telling her to come along, make sure she gets the message, and she isn't there, and he's just not happy. So he runs off to go and find her and goes to where she's going to be working. She's had a shitty day as well.
Yeah.
And she's been off with like the councilman and his boyfriend. Mm-hmm. And she has this moment of realization. It's just like, God, I'm miserable. Where's Gary? Like, he's been a consistent part of her life for ages now.
They can't live without each other at this point, can they?
But that's when they redo the running as well, and it shows you the last clips of them, her running to him in the jail, him running after her, and it shoots to both of them, running at each other. But it's not in that way where it's like really fast. I can't remember what it is as a film. I think it might be Joaquin Phoenix, where he's like absolutely sprinting, and the cameraman was like having to struggle to keep up with him, and that was kind of like born out of like passion and desperation. Whereas this, it's the way they run towards each other is a lot lower in pace. It's a lot less fervent, and they're just like the searching and looking. It feels more hopeful than it does.
And even that
desperate.
has a joke within that as well, where they actually, when they meet each other, they slip and fall, and it's
they
it's
run
a really
into each
cute
other
little
and fall
moment.
over.
But I do wonder, because again, I think their relationship as a couple has always been one-sided throughout the majority of the film, but having her
But
say,
how much of that is her being like, I'm an adult, I can't do this? It's not
I don't
okay.
know. But the thing is, I don't know. I genuinely don't think she sees anything past platonic.
No, I don't think she is
friendship
either.
until-
But how much of that is her preventing herself from thinking?
I mean,
that?
potentially. I'm not really sure. But
Because I know she addresses it with Danielle, where they're sat there, and she says several
it's
times,
weird that I'm
like,
hanging
it's
out with
weird-
Gary and his
It's
15-year-old
weird
friends.
that I'm hanging out, yeah. And Danielle's like, well, it is what you think it is.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's fucking weird that I'm hanging out with 15
Yeah. So she knows it. But again, it's her lusting for childhood rather than Gary as a sexual conquest. I think it's more of her. She wants to still be a 15-year-old girl. I just wish. I think the bit that it fumbles a little bit, but again, I think I might be wrong, and I think
you're wrong.
I think on a rewatch, I wish she hadn't said that she loved him back at the end.
Well, he didn't say it to
Only
her.
because I know, but this is the thing. But only because I do think at the place we leave them, it's still a very toxic relationship,
And we don't see her actually say the words with her mouth hole.
with her mouth hole.
It's a dub over where she says, I love you, Gary.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you don't see her mouth move. She doesn't say it in that moment.
I often wonder whether or not this is Gary imagining it almost.
Well, ha ha. You're falling into my trap.
You've activated my trap card.
So while we're here on that, this movie, in certain aspects to me, I kind of wonder if it is all just from Gary's perspective in the future, because it's one of those things where the tales as we go along get taller and it becomes more outlandish and the things that happen. It's all about like teenage events and happenings and incidences, like I say. But like when they go,
Like I say, I do.
when they meet the elderly director Jack,
Yes, yeah.
played by is that
shit.
Sean Penn?
That's the actor. He's the fuck.
So Sean Penn is Jack Holden, an actor, and you have Tom Waits, who plays Rex Blau, who is a
Tom Waits, by the way.
Tom Waits, and he has some weight in his performance as well. Although he's not like he's only in
didn't appreciate
one
that.
scene.
I don't know how much I appreciate that.
But between him and Sean Penn, there's this whole scene with Alana where she jumps on the back of a motorbike and Sean Penn's going to do a stunt and jump over the fire.
Yeah.
And it's all mismatched. She falls off. Gary runs to her. And as we go along, we have Bradley Cooper, who's absolutely insane.
love
And they
him.
happen to deliver a waterbed to his house and break Barbara Streisand's house by flooding it with a water hose.
Yeah.
And it just feels like these tales are getting taller as we go along.
You're
And it
not
very
wrong,
much
you know.
feels like a retrospective
Yeah.
of someone looking back on the life.
Which again could play into Anderson's idea of that he's retrospectively telling us about a person he knew when he was 15, who had a relationship with a 20-year-old woman. So you're absolutely right. This could the level of fabrication here is also up for debate, I think, and I don't think it detracts from the film itself. I really don't.
I don't think it's even important, to be honest, whether that's real
Did
or
you-
not. But when you see them kiss at the end, she says, I love you to Gary,
Yeah.
but we don't see her actually visibly say the words. So this could have happened at any point in the future. It might just be a nod to, or maybe they will be happy in the future. But they just kiss, and that's kind of what we end on.
yeah.
And I choose to believe that I love you didn't happen there and then.
It's a again. I think it lends to the idea of realism, and it lends to the idea of imperfection.
You like this movie more than me, and I'm defending
No,
it.
I absolutely love this movie. No, I'm not. I just think there's a level of toxicity in the relationship, regardless of whether or not it ends like that. I still think there's a level of toxicity.
That's
that isn't
real. There's a
really-
level of toxicity
No.
in our relationship.
Well, no, I get that. There's a level of toxicity in everything. I understand that, but I almost think it's the same as The Graduate. So obviously the end of The Graduate is them realizing that the mistake that they made. Well, sorry, the decision to run off together is a terrible mistake, and
But you can't tell with these. This
You
is
can't
why I
tell.
like it,
You're right,
because
you
you
can't.
can't tell.
Yeah.
This could bloom to be a relationship where they end up helping each other continue to grow as people, because that's what they relied on each other
we
for.
also don't know if the I love you is
earlier.
platonic or if it's romantic either. I think like the kiss
Yeah,
is for Gary, and Gary initiates the kiss.
Gary initiates the kiss. But I mean, he's 17, she's 25. It could happen now legally.
Maybe not in
Oh, wait,
America.
not in America,
Yeah,
shit.
Not in America. Still fucked up. I mean, it's still a big age gap. Like, I mean, she wouldn't
It's
be
still
25
a
at that
big
point.
age gap, but
Yeah.
again, Gary's had businesses, he's acted, he's been raised around adults, he has a adult relationship with his own mother. You don't even see his dad, so there's that kind of like generational like mind fuck there a little bit, because he doesn't have a father figure where he acts like a child towards. He is
He's almost a father to his brother as well, isn't he? He's very
almost a
protective of
father to his brother, yeah. And I think that plays off really well that they could potentially have a relationship that does allow them to continue to grow as people. But it also begs the question, is this going to be a horribly volatile relationship?
Yeah, this is where I'm
that where they
standing at,
continue to break up. You don't know. And I think that's the nice
Because I
part.
don't-
It's the human condition.
Well, I don't
you
think
take that risk.
This is it, and I think what a lot of people are misunderstanding about the film is the fact that films have to be angled towards
Conclusive.
not even that, but angled towards your sensibility of right and wrong. And I
right,
think
yeah.
that's the problem. Like, you can tell a story about severely fucked up people and still have it be
Yeah, man. V for
uplifting.
V for
and-
Vendetta.
It's about
Some
terrorists.
people don't want to blow Parliament. Some of us do.
Well, this is
Let's
it.
see how
It's
it
about
goes.
I mean, you're right. Like, a lot of people, even something like, I think like the most depraved kind of film, like Salu, the Marquis de Sade, fucking orgy fest. Like, I mean, you can, or even Human Centipede to an extent. Like, people are like,
Yeah,
oh, but
things
this,
like Old Boy, where it's like you feel these characters have had sex with a father and a daughter. It's incestuous.
It is.
But you just feel bad for them. You don't feel like that's disgusting. You just feel heartbroken
Yeah.
that they've had to endure it.
and I do want to wrap this up because I didn't realize how long we're going for. But I think, as far as the controversies go, all I would say is watch the film. Have your opinion.
We're still on
post-
controversies.
But no, have your opinion post. Like, have your opinion about the controversy. No one's right or wrong in this situation.
Oh, you're allowed an opinion.
But do make
obviously.
sure you see the film first. Don't cancel things just because it has uncomfortable subject matter that you're not maybe you're too fragile to handle or too immature to discuss. I think, and especially a film about immaturity, I think
That's
it's
it's about understanding.
Yeah.
Like it's a learning experience. You're looking at this through almost like a scientific lens of media.
well, this is it. It's meant to be retrospective of the time period again, and it's meant to be retrospective of a person that Anderson knew as well, which I think. Again, if we're limiting what kind of stories our artists can tell, that's really worrying for me. But I do want to. I kind of want to.
Just before we go, if you're not totally convinced by that argument, when Doctor Who became Matt Smith and he said, "Oh, still not ginger," my auntie,
Oh my God.
my auntie fully was kicking off at my mum, being like, "That's disgusting. How can they say that? It's so anti-ginger." And I was just explaining to her, like, "You've clearly never watched the show because he wants to be ginger, and that was the joke. You've just jumped on the bandwagon of, oh, someone said this is wrong. I agree.
Or
Don't be
it's
that
the,
person. Think for yourself."
Or it's the Mass Effect sex scandal thing where Fox News went acca when the first Mass Effect came out because it portrayed depictions of sex, and it's like, no, you're making a game where my child can pick up and he can have sex with an alien. And it's like, you definitely haven't played the fucking game, have you?
Yeah.
My final thoughts. I absolutely adore this film. I think it's an achingly beautiful film. It's powerfully evocative love letter to the 70s. That's equal parts incredibly affectionate and similarly astoundingly honest. And in a way that I think Anderson paints the San Fernando Valley in this beautifully hauntingly dark light. It's a story about the human condition existing within shades of grey. And while this isn't probably close to Anderson's best, it is still a joy to watch based entirely on its craft, its performances, and its direction. Like it's just a fucking joy from beginning to end. I give it a 5 out of 5. It's a 4 marks for me.
Yeah, I don't have a bad thing to say about it. The problem with these types of movies is I just don't care about the human condition. I don't care about teenagers.
Well, that's 'cause you're a
I don't
fucking
care
monster.
about romance or love. Even when I was a teenager, that period where we broke up for a few months, I wasn't like pining or listening to sad
He's
songs
lying.
and music.
Whereas I remember specifically, I was listening to Adele's "Someone Like You" at a New Year's party on the stairs, crying my eyes out because you're a monster.
I just kind of got on with life, and those types of movies don't appeal to me. However, objectively, I can tell you this is staggeringly beautiful. It is true. It is life. It is real. The performances are out of this world, and it was so good to see the whole Haim family.
Oh
in
my
a
god!
movie
Right.
together. It
We're meant to be
was
seeing
so
them this year
cute.
on tour. Fingers crossed if COVID doesn't ruin our.
Damn you, Corbin.
It's already ruined one gig for us this year.
But yeah, it really gives that sense of wanderlust that people have been craving since we've been locked up and cooped up. And it just makes you want to be somewhere that you aren't. Tit for tat, good and bad. It transports you.
Yeah, this is it. And I think again, star performances from Milana and from I need to see more from both of these.
Can not big those two up enough.
Yeah.
My mind is absolutely blown. Good for Alana.
Honestly,
she's
Cooper,
amazing.
Cooper was one who blew me away more. Like,
Not only does he look like his dad, he has his acting chops as well. Like
right. I honestly almost brought me to tears. Like, if nothing in the film necessarily made me cry, but watching Cooper Hoffman perform, just seeing his dad, and I was like, It's not enough time has passed for me to fully be over Philip Seymour Hoffman, I think, and it did hit me quite hard. 5 out of 5 for me. Do go see it at your earliest convenience if you can.
If you have any interest, no matter how minor, in just a story of being and life, go see it. There's nothing I can possibly critique this on. I even think Liam's wrong about how the ending wraps up.
Okay.
I think it's great. I think there's a lot you can take away. Standout performances by all. Get yourself there as soon as you can before it's gone. Let the world know that we want these types of movies.
Yeah.
We want independent, free thinkers making innovative ideas.
Just films with a theme would be nice every now and again. Sorry. Yeah, man. Thank you so much for listening to our very first episode of Fresh Meat. We hope you liked it. We hope you enjoyed it.
I hope you had as much fun as I did.
We will be back very shortly with a few more episodes of this show. Anytime we see a film in the theatre, we will be giving you one, so you'll be expecting quite a lot of these.
Quite a lot.
I think we're seeing Titane next. I think we'll be seeing Titane or Scream next, which I'm very excited for both. Do check us out on Instagram at Bad Taste Buds Pod and Twitter at Bad Taste Buds Pod and on Facebook at Bad Taste Buds Podcast. I love you loads. I missed you. And let's have a really good 2020, guys.
Yeah. Try Licorice Pizza and tell us how it tastes.
Or don't, because that sounds fucking awful.
Bye.